You're starting to see, I think, the groundwork being laid in Ukraine and Western leaders are starting to do this. And I want to get Scott's take on all of this. So Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, the man who told the world, there are no weapons of mass destruction where you think there are, and we're not going to get into a war for that reason. So Scott, I want to get your take on this. So we saw on Friday night, let me just sort of set the stage for this. President Biden was at a Democratic fundraiser where he basically let slip that, we were telling him stuff about Putin for a while, and Zelensky just didn't want to hear it. Here's the Newsweek headline. Ukraine slams Biden's comments on Zelensky not heeding warnings, calls them absurd. Here's the Newsweek piece. And so you want to provide some more context here on this?
Well, I think this is what we've been wondering is this partnership between Ukraine and Western leaders, where Zelensky was propped up as the more popular guy, that we needed to sort of float him up as a celebrity. Is it breaking, right? And so if there's sort of a spat between these Western leaders and enough to make public comments, well, then does that mean that there is going to be a drying up of the spigot? Just tomorrow, European leaders will meet, and they also are quite divided over whether or not to continue to support Ukraine or not. Italy, Hungary, these nations have already said, we want to see an end to this. We don't want to continue to funnel money into this. So what now? So if you want to maybe give us some background on when it looks like the writing is on the wall, do you turn your back on the guy who was your time cover model? Does this seem sort of par for the course?
Time cover model.
Well, we look, let's start with build on that. Zelensky has been built up as the modern day equivalent of Winston Churchill, a brave leader. We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them in the cities. We will fight them here and there and everywhere. Or King Leonidas with the 300 at Thermopylae standing in the face of the immortals. None of that's true. But I will say this, that Biden, the U.S. intelligence community had been saying since November of last year that a Russian invasion of Ukraine was imminent. Imminent defined what, 3-4 days. It was imminent every day, imminent. And then at the same time, they said the reason why we're releasing this information is to let the Russians know that we know what they're up to, and maybe that'll help deter them from attacking. At the same time, we were putting in place these, these massive sanctions, which were also supposed to deter them from attacking. So the purpose of the United States was not to empower Ukraine to resist a Russian invasion. The purpose of the United States in their policy was to seek to intimidate Russia to not attack, while we were at the same time pursuing the same policies with Ukraine that were prompting Russia to be concerned within the fight. So it's just literally the definition of incompetence. And the Ukrainians have every right to say, we're a little peeved because, you guys knew this was coming. We knew it was coming. And yet, what did you do to support us? You provided us with javelins and stingers up front, but we really needed the heavy weapons. And now that we're losing, you're being spare with the provision of the weapons we need. Thank you very much for the 100 artillery tubes, but we need 1,000. Thank you very much for the 200 tanks, but we need 500. And we need it now, or else we're going to lose this war. And if I were Zelensky, I'd be a little nervous when, remember, Mark Miley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, testified for Congress that he thought Kiev was going to fall within 5 days. So if the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff thinks Kiev is going to fall to Russia within 5 days, that doesn't tell you that the United States has much hope for Ukraine surviving. So the fact that Ukraine has survived has nothing to do with American policy and everything to do with the tenacity of the Ukrainian soldier. I will never denigrate the heroism of your average Ukrainian soldier. They're dying in large numbers, but those guys are at the front. They're fighting, they're hooking and jabbing, they're paying the price, and they're the only reason why Russia hasn't rolled over that pathetic little country, or big country. But it's not about America providing support. And I think Europe's recognizing that this is a lost cause, that literally the longer this fight goes on, the worst thing in the world for Europe is happening, the empowerment of Russia. Remember, European policy was We're going to drag this war out so that Russia is weakened to the extent that they will never again try to do something like this. But the exact opposite is happening.
Yes.
Russia is winning so decisively that if one would think that Russia now has a template for how to proceed on to the next problem. I don't think Putin's that immature, but from a European standpoint, they're getting the exact opposite result than what they thought they were getting up front.
So can I ask you, is there an opportunity now for Western leaders to actually establish peace right now? The way that Italy and Hungary are calling for a ceasefire, is there an opportunity for the United States to say, like, look, what you want to win this war is not coming. We gave you $41 billion. That's the end of it. Unless there's some money we can sort of slide under in weapons contracts. But otherwise, is it really down to the last Ukrainian? That's the only way this ends? Or is there an opportunity still for peace at this point?
Look, to be a leader, people, you got to have followers. So who is America, who is Europe leading when they say we want a ceasefire? Are they leading the Ukrainians? I don't think the Ukrainians are responding to them. The suggestion is that they are going to give Russia an off-ramp by saying, see, Russia's not listening to them. I mean, for the longest time, Shoigu, the defense minister, wouldn't even pick up the phone when Lloyd Austin called because he didn't care. America had nothing to bring to the table. America today has nothing to bring to the table. I'll say it one more time. Russia has paid too high of a price to quit at this point. This war will end when Russia wants it to end, not anybody else. They don't care about Joe Biden. They don't care about Jan Stoltenberg. They don't care about any of these pathetic little European leaders. Too many Russians have died. All they care about now is winning the war on the terms that Russia will dictate to whoever is in charge of Ukraine when Ukraine makes the decision that it's time to surrender. The West will have nothing to do with this.
So will the West? What sort of egg will be on the face of Western leaders at this point, and will they be willing to accept it? Because look, this is a proxy regime. I'm sorry, this is a puppet regime installed in 2014. A few years ago, I think in 2015 or 2014, you had John McCain, Senator John McCain. You had Senator Lindsey Graham standing there. Telling those leaders this is, I think, before Zelensky's time, telling them we're going to go back to Washington. We're going to stand with you to end the Russian aggression. We're going to stop Russia. This is what we're going to do. You have our full support. It seems like that's not the case anymore. And what would be left if it is the case? I just don't. What is the end game for President Biden at this point and NATO leaders?
Well, this is going to look. In August of 2021. NATO and the United States suffered one of the greatest embarrassments in modern history, the retreat from Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And that left a huge amount of egg on everybody's face. And it left Europe to say, what kind of friend, what kind of supporter, what kind of ally is the United States? So the whole purpose of what's been going on in Europe right now with Ukraine and this chest thumping is the United States seeking to reassert its legitimacy and its credibility as the leader of NATO, and in doing so, reform NATO into this solid alliance against the common enemy, Russia. And if a month ago, NATO was buying into its own propaganda. Jan Stoltenberg was speaking proudly. NATO was talking about this great summit we're going to have in June. Well, June's going to be more like it's going to be a wake. It's not going to be a celebration. It's a wake. It's a wake for NATO. NATO's dying. NATO's dead. Its credibility. The egg on the face this time, NATO can't recover from this because this is NATO standing up against the big dog. You don't ever want to go in and fight the big dog. You'd always like to just leave the two dogs growling, because when you fight the big dog, one of the big dogs is going to win. It's going to be decisive. And right now what we're seeing is a decisive Russian victory over the NATO big dog. And NATO can't recover from that. I'm not saying it's going to disband in June, but I think the June summit is going to be far more chaotic than they think. And, when alliances start to crack, other issues come out. For instance, Turkey right now is talking about going to war against Greece. Right. That's a NATO ally. Right. And you have Hungary, thumbing its nose at Poland. And so the fractures are starting to show. And I don't think this is going to be this grand unifying moment. I think this is going to be Joe Biden coming in with the fire brigade, trying to put out fires and Jan Stoltenberg trying to spin this into something that looks other than the decisive defeat that NATO is suffering. Because never forget, this is a proxy war. NATO is fighting Russia using the Ukrainian proxy, and Russia's winning decisively.
You know, I want to point out a recent content analysis that showed that during the inception of the Iraq War, only 10% of cable news pundits advocated for peace. And the other 90% were all in bloodshed, bloodthirst, right? And so when you have a voice on that says, don't do this, right? This is what it looks like. I just want to point that out to our audiences, that talking to you is the exact opposite narrative that we have seen as we've been watching cable news, saying Ukraine will win, let's keep sending guns, right? And so it's extremely uncomfortable, I think, for those of us who are sort of used to the mindless cable news narrative, to think about lives lost of people who are loved by somebody's son, right? Somebody's dad, those kind of things. That's just not something that we're allowed to think about. We continue to, you know, the words of Jean Baudrillard continue to ring true in his book, The Gulf War Did Not Take Place, because it's put away from us at a comfortable arm's distance. All we have to feel right now is more expensive peanut butter, right?
Right.
But to actually think about this yeah, I'm not finding it digestible, but I'm finding it important. So thank you for that. That's all I had to say. You can say something else now.
I didn't know if that was
you want.
No, I like that. So, you know, I guess, you know, the blame game continues. We're going to continue to see, I think, more of this over the next few weeks. As this grind down continues. But all eyes on what happens on June 15th in Brussels. We'll see if they get this money. They'll see if they get these weapons. It will be really interesting to see if they get this shopping list of weapons that they're wanting in Ukraine, or if the West has said, you know what, we're going to reassess the situation. We're going to come up with a different idea. We're going to push for peace. I think I will fall out of my chair if that actually happens. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. You know, we've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.